Hi everyone, my name is Alexis Ivashuk. I will be taking over as a moderator for the next couple hours on the stage, and I would like to introduce Oliver Zrno. He is an associate at FinReg Partners, which is a law firm that specializes in crypto assets, capital markets, and digital operation resilience. And he will present on the challenges in EU of providing crypto asset services. So Oliver, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for all of you for coming. And today I will talk to you about the challenges to provide the crypto asset services inside of the EU. I'm sure that after the last segment, you're all pretty familiar with the MiCA framework. So we'll dive into that, and I'll give you the essentials on what you need to do and what you need to be doing to comply with the MiCA regulation and to start providing the crypto asset services inside of the European Union. So for those who do not know me or us yet, my name is Oliver. I'm a junior associate at FinReg Partners. We are a boutique law firm located in Prague, and we focus mainly on the financial market. We provide services to fintech companies. We provide services to crypto asset or future crypto asset service providers. We provide our services to startup companies. We provide M&A services, and we also acquire licenses for our clients with the local regulator, which is the Czech National Bank. As I already told you, I'm sure that you all are familiar with the MiCA regime, so we'll probably skip the introduction to MiCA, since I think you all already know. But to give you the few basic facts, MiCA is already in force. So all of the new players that want to start providing the crypto asset services inside of the EU, they have to apply for a license. And the regulated crypto asset services, I just picked out a few examples. It is not all of them. There's some that are more rare, I'd say, that aren't as often provided. But as an example, a lot of the future service providers will probably provide the custody and administration of crypto assets on behalf of client, which in practice basically means that you're safekeeping the crypto assets of your client on their behalf. Then we have the operation of a trading platform, which is basically a company providing a platform for their clients to trade in and to kind of exchange either one or more crypto assets, which can be Ethereum, Bitcoin, and so on and so on. Then we have an exchange, which is quite similar to the trading platform, but the exchange doesn't really happen between clients. It only happens between the company and their client. And the company is using their proprietary capital to make the exchange with the client. Then we have execution of orders, which is in practice basically a service when a client comes up to a company and is like, okay, I want you to buy me some Ethereum, and you buy the Ethereum for your client. That's the execution of orders. And then there's reception and transmission of orders. And that is basically, in practice, a client coming up to you, telling you, sure, I'd like to buy some Ethereum, but instead of you actually buying the Ethereum on behalf of the client, you're transmitting the order to a third party that will make the transaction. Then there's portfolio management, and there's providing transfer services. So portfolio management is, I would say, pretty self-explanatory, and basically revolves around keeping up the portfolio of your client, keeping the structure of the portfolio, making investments on behalf of the client. So the portfolio is up to the standards that are set by the client. And the transfer services are pretty self-explanatory as well. And they're basically just services of you transferring the crypto assets to different addresses on behalf of the client. Now, we've established what the regulated services are. Now let's talk about the essentials on what you should do in order to start providing the services or prepare to get a license from the local regulator. First of all, very important step, a foundation of the whole process, is a solid business plan with financial forecasts. Because in order to run a successful business, you have to have a plan, and you have to back it up by financials. And the regulators and the MiCA itself expects the business plan to be very precise. There's requirements for the substance of the business plan, and it has to reflect the future 3 years of provision of the services. And we'll talk about the specifics of the business plan on a later stage. Then there's compliance with prudential requirements, which is basically compliance with either a minimal capital amount or an amount that is calculated based on your fixed overheads, or there's insurance. Then we have a very big step as well, and that's hiring fundamental staff. Since the MiCA regulation, there is a lot of functions that have to happen in order to comply with the regulation, and a lot of the functions, they cannot be really provided by one person. So you have to have a lot of departments. I wouldn't say a lot, but you have to have a few departments with certain functions, and the functions should be outlined very specifically so the regulator can see whether you're doing the processes right. Then there's a framework for internal governance, internal control mechanisms, which is basically just a framework of you just setting out your internal rules to be providing your services and to complying with the regulation. We'll talk about the internal governance as well on a later stage, so I don't think I have to explain it now. Then, for the application itself, a process has to be done in order to ensure relevant information about the members of the management body of the company, members or shareholders with qualifying holdings, and members that will be providing key functions of the company. So, for example, the regulator would want to see the CVs, so the people who are in charge of a process are suitable to be doing that process, and they have a specific knowledge, they're trustworthy, and the same goes to the member of the management body itself. They have to have certain knowledge, they have to have appropriateness, they have to be trustworthy, and you have to show the regulator that all the people are complying with these rules. And lastly, just submit an application with the relevant competent authority. All of the competent authorities each state has one, and in the Czech Republic, for example, it's the Czech National Bank. So moving on, we have the business plan, which is the foundation of your business. And the business plan, as I said, should reflect at least 3 years in advance. So all of the things that you're describing in the business plan, they should account for at least 3 years of your intended business. And for example, the key points to be described in the business plan is, for example, the organizational structure and the group structure. So the regulator would like to see what your internal governance is like, what your internal organization is like, what your group structure is, how the activities of other members of the group will affect yours, and how the crypto asset services will affect the other group members' activities. And you have to describe it to the regulator. For example, a big part of what the regulator asks a lot is the interplay and the integration of the group. So, for example, if you're going to be sharing staff, sharing hardware, software, sharing know-how with the other companies in the group, that is relevant to the regulator. Then a lot of the business plan shortcomings are not very good description of the crypto asset services that will be provided. It has to be very precise, very specific. You have to show to the regulator what services you're going to be providing, why you're going to be providing the services, what clients are you going to be targeting, why you're going to be targeting the clients, and what channels you'll be using to target the clients. So, for example, how are you going to do marketing? What platform are you going to be using to target the clients? Are you going to have a mobile app? Are you going to use just a browser interface? The regulator will want to know, and you also have to plan ahead. If you're planning, for example, an expansion in product line, an expansion in marketing channels, you have to describe it in the business plan. Then, very important part, a list of intended jurisdictions that you will provide the services in, because one of the MiCA requirements is, in order to get a license, you have to show to the regulator that you have a strong presence inside of the country that you're applying in order to eradicate the jurisdiction hopping that was mentioned in the previous panel. So the regulator has to believe, or at least has to be made aware of, that you have a strong local presence and you're applying in the country that you're applying in because you want to actually provide the services there. So you will have to describe it in the business plan. And also, if you're planning on expanding to other jurisdictions, you have to describe the expansion. You have to give reasoning to why you're expanding, and you have to show for example, the clients you'll be targeting there, why you're expanding, into what countries are you expanding. And I think we've already covered the majority of the business plan. And the last part, I think it is very, very crucial to outline or describe what resources you're going to be allocating to your business. What human resources, what ICT resources, what financial resources will be allocated to providing the service. Because in order to be granted a license, you have to have a financial, a human, and also ICT background in order to provide the services safely. Then we're getting onto the tricky part. It is the fundamental staff. So let's start with the management body. The management body is the group of people that are actively leading the company on a day-to-day basis or supervising its activities. And basically, there's three acceptable models. There's one model where there's at least 2 members of the board of the director or 2 members of the management body. They are executive, and then there's one supervisory body that is supervising the whole company and the actions of the directors. Then there's another model where there's basically no supervisory body, and there's 3 directors. One of them is an executive director, one of them is a supervisory director, and one of them is a substitute. Because in order to be providing the crypto asset services in compliance with MiCA, you have to have, at least for the key functions, there should be at least people that can jump in when someone is missing. Because you cannot discontinue a function like that at a snap of a finger. So, for example, if we're talking about the management body, and there is only 2 directors, and one of them is executive and one of them is supervisory, what happens when one of them is missing? That is why in the second scenario, there is a third, the substitute director, that can jump in when it's convenient. Then there is the third option. There is one executive director, there is one supervisory director, and then there's a CEO, which is not part of the board of directors and answers directly to the board of directors. So he's one level below the directors. Then we have key functions. These are all the functions that are kind of hinted to or just straight up put into MiCA and other regulations that are affecting the crypto asset service providers. So, for example, you have to have a department or a function that is in charge of complaint handling. You have to have a department or an employee who is in charge of risk management, who is in charge of the ICT risk management, because the crypto asset service providers are also affected by the digital operational resilience regulation. So they have to follow the rules of the ICT risk management. So they have to have a person or a department that is in charge of the ICT risk management. Then we have the outsourcing officer, which is basically a person or a department that is in charge of supervising the outsourcing arrangements and the things that are being done by third parties. Then there's a safekeeping officer. So, for example, for crypto asset service providers that are providing custody for their clients, there has to be a safekeeping officer who is in charge of supervising whether the crypto assets of the clients are safeguarded and are separate from the funds or crypto assets of the company itself. So it will prevent the company from using the crypto assets of their clients for their own account and their own actions. So there has to be a safekeeping officer. Then there is a quite a big part, which is the AML or KYC, and basically you have to all of the European countries, they have their own framework to tackle the AML or KYC. So you have to have a department or the appropriate amount of employees that will ensure the compliance with the AML rules. Then we have a crisis manager, which is basically a department or a person that is ensuring that when something happens, something bad happens, when a risk scenario materializes, there is an exit plan and there is a crisis management plan on how to tackle the situation so the business doesn't get disrupted. Then we have compliance, which is basically I'd say a legal support, so to speak, and the role of compliance is to ensure that the company, all of the activities provided by the company, all of the processes done by the company are in line with MiCA, with local regulation, with the AML regulation, with all the regulatory aspects possible that are affecting the actions of the crypto asset service provider. And then there's obviously accounting, which is just a standard for everyday functioning of a company. And if we just look at all the functions that are necessary from our own experience and from the experience with the Czech regulator, it is not really possible to successfully obtain a license when there's less than 8 people present, or less than 8 employees present, and because there's a lot of functions that cannot really be done by the same person. So for example, the compliance function, it cannot be done by the same person as accounting. The risk management cannot be done by the same person that is doing the compliance. So the functions inside of the company has to be kind of separated between the executive functions and the controlling functions. If there is a person whose job description is to control something, he cannot be the person actually doing the job that he's controlling. Moving on to the big part of the application as well, it is the internal procedures and internal governance. So when I talk to you about all the fundamental stuff, all the business plans, you have to have procedures to be put in place, written policies that will outline on what department, what employee, what outsourcing company is doing the things that the crypto asset service provider should be doing according to regulation. So for example, you have to have an internal policy that is describing on your AML policy or AML process, your KYC process, the client onboarding, how you're going to be reporting suspicious transactions. Then there's the complaint handling process. It has to outline who is going to be in charge of actually gathering the complaint, who is going to resolve the complaint, who is going to make changes to the company when there's a problem, when the people that are actually making the complaints are right. Then there's procedures that shall be in place to ensure that the people that are doing key functions and members of the management body, that they're skilled enough, they're knowledgeable enough, and they're trustworthy enough. And the company has to keep track of why the specific person is really worthy of actually doing the job that they're doing. Then there's the risk and crisis management policies, which are just policies to describe on what risks you know of, what risk scenarios may happen to you, what you're going to do when the risk scenario materializes, how you're going to identify the risks, what you're going to do if the risk actually materializes, what is going to be the lesson learned from it, what changes are you going to make them, how are you going to make the changes, who is going to be in charge of the changes. Then there's processes to comply with the prudential requirements, which we'll get on to in a second. So basically, you have to have a written policy that will state on, for example, when there is a requirement of the company to keep a minimal capital requirement. What is going to happen if the accounting department suddenly realizes, okay, we cannot really fulfill the requirement? What is going to be done? How are you going to get the funds? From where you're going to get the funds? Because in order to actually have a license and keep it, you have to comply with the prudential requirements at all times of your activities. Then there's accounting and bookkeeping, very standard for all companies. There's outsourcing management, which we'll describe on how you're going to, what functions you're going to be outsourcing, why you're going to be outsourcing them, who is going to be in charge of actually, for example, write up a contract with the outsourcing company, who is going to be in charge of auditing the company, who is going to be in charge of assessing the quality of the work that the company is doing. Then we have the provision of crypto asset services itself, a process that will describe what exact steps each department and each person inside of the company will do in order to provide the services to your clients. So for example, if we take the example of custody, who's going to ensure that the crypto assets of your clients actually end up in a custody wallet? Who is going to be in charge of actually keeping records on what crypto assets and whose crypto assets are you holding? Then there's the data protection framework. It is very much linked to either the GDPR, the personal information, or it is the data protection framework that derives from the Digital Operational Resilience Act. So, for example, you have to ensure that all of your systems are safe enough to be transmitting data, how they're going to be set up in order to be safe enough. Who is going to determine if they're safe enough? Who is in charge of actually the actual technical stuff? And then there's the conflict of interest management. For example, if the company, if there's a lot of people, there is a lot of situations where conflicts of interest may arise, and in a lot of cases, they can lead to insider trading, they can lead to the breach of local laws, to the breach of regulatory requirements. So you have to have a policy in place that will ensure that you identify the conflicts of interest effectively, and you will mitigate them effectively in order to minimize their impact on the company itself. Now we're getting to the last part, which may seem the easiest, but is not as easy. There's prudential requirements. We have the own funds or the minimal capital funds requirement. There's a fixed overheads requirement, and there's insurance requirement. The first two, the minimal funds and the fixed overheads, you have to keep the sum that is higher. So for example, there's 3 tiers of own funds requirement. So the third tier, only the persons that are operating a trading platform will fall into the third tier, and will have to hold a minimal capital of 150,000 euros. Then there's a second tier, which is only for the providers who will be providing exchange and custody, and there's a tier 1 that is for all the others. So for example, if your fixed overheads, if you calculate 25% of fixed overheads, and it is higher than the minimal requirement from your tier, you are mandated to keep an own funds requirement from the overheads, which means that instead of holding, for example, the 150,000, you're going to be holding 25% of fixed overheads amount. And then there's insurance, which is basically a safeguard for people who don't really know how to keep up with the requirements, and the insurance can supplement a part or a certain amount of each of the requirements. So for example, you can hold just 100,000 euros instead of 150 and cover the rest with the insurance. And the insurance, it has a very specific coverage from MiCA, but it is very hard to pass the licensing procedure with just the insurance, since a lot of European regulators, they don't really like to see the insurance being used, so they prefer the funds in themselves. And now we're getting to the end of our presentation today. So thank you for attending. And if you have any questions, you can contact us. If you require legal services, you can contact us as well also. And thank you for coming.